The recipe for success in the MLB postseason in 2020 seems to be pretty darn straightforward. Out-homer your opponent, and you'll almost surely win. Hello, everyone, and welcome into this Thursday, October 8th edition of Around the Bases from 110 Sports. Live streaming here, as always, on the 110 Sports Network at 110sportsmedia.com/live, twitch.tv/110sports, and on demand on the website, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So in fact, actually, teams were a perfect 19-0 in games where they out-homer their opponent this postseason. And that was at least until a fun Game 2, an intense Game 2 last night between the Dodgers and Padres to finish out yesterday's slate. Home runs have been the key in the playoffs this year, no doubt about it. Some games have looked like home run derbies, honestly, at some points, especially in that Astros-A's series. And this postseason, 53.5% of runs have been scored via the home run. So we're talking over 50%, over half of the runs that have been scored in this postseason have come as a result of home runs, which is a pretty large amount, a pretty big percentage. In fact, it's actually tied for the highest rate in a single postseason with 1956. So we're talking a ways back. Which means, we haven't seen in any postseason in the last few decades, in the last several decades, this many home runs playing a big role in scoring runs. And it's going to be interesting to see if this trend plays out. It is sort of very much illustrative of baseball in 2020. Home runs, strikeouts, not a ton in between. Of course, there's plenty of a decrease in results in between, I should say. So here we are on this Thursday early afternoon, and we've got 4 games coming up today once more. We had 4 games Tuesday, 4 games yesterday, we have 4 games again. I'm sorry, we had 2 games. We had 2 games on the schedule we had 4 games on the schedule. Tuesday, 4 Wednesday, and again 4 today. We have 2 Game 4s of the ALDS, 2 Game 3s of the NLDS on tap for today. All 4 of those series could continue into tomorrow. All 4 of those series could also be done today. The division series could end as soon as today across the board. It's doubtful, but it's certainly a possibility, of course. We've got the Astros and the Rays with 2-1 leads in their series over the A's and the Yankees, respectively. And the Braves and the Dodgers are a perfect 2-0 in their series. They're just 1 win away from a series sweep. So we've got a lot to get to today on the show, so let's go ahead and just dive right in. Here's a look at what you can expect coming up. It's a simple formula. It's one we've been following here the last couple of shows. We're going to start by going through the ALDS series. Instead of previews and predictions and whatnot, we'll update you on the games that have happened because, like I said, there have been a lot of baseball games in the last few days. Since we last talked on Tuesday, there have been 8 postseason games. So we're going to get you caught up on that. For each league, we're going to go through what's happened in the last couple of games, where things stand now, and a couple of takeaways for each series. What have we learned? What does it mean moving forward for the rest of the series and potentially moving forward for the team that may advance? Then we'll also go through news and notes. We'll go through the NL side as well, and we'll wrap up the show, as always, pretty much with a look at what's on deck. So we'll discuss a little bit at the end some of the specifics of the matchups today. I'll give you my predictions. We'll look at pitching matchups and whatnot here to wrap up the show. So we're unsurprisingly going to start with the ALDS and updates from there. And we're going to start with the Astros-A's series. And here's the basics. Behind an offense that has kicked things into high gear, the Astros took the first 2 games of the ALDS against Oakland, and they led late in Game 3 before the A's rallied to keep their ALCS hopes alive. That's the simple explanation. Let's dive into it a little bit more. We talked about Game 1, which was on Monday. We talked about that on Tuesday's show. The Astros winning the series opener 10-5 behind 2 home runs from Carlos Correa. Jose Altuve's go-ahead 2-run single following a Marcus Semien error, and George Springer's 4 hits in that game. Game 2 was Tuesday night, and Springer did it again. He hit 2 home runs, and Framber Valdez went 7 strong innings as the Astros topped the A's 5-2 in game number 2 of the series. Chris Davis and Chad Pinder each hit a solo homer for Oakland in the second and in the fourth innings. One of them in the second, one of them in the fourth. But that's all the A's could manage offensively against Valdez, who struck out 4 and walked 1 in the 7 innings in his first postseason start of his career, before 2 relievers for the Astros held the A's scoreless the rest of the way. George Springer put the Astros ahead to stay in this game with a 2-run home run in the top of the 3rd inning. Carlos Correa an RBI ground out in the 4th. And then catcher Martin Maldonado and then Springer went back-to-back with home runs in the 5th inning. And that was that. Sean Manaea for the A's struggled to 4 earned runs in 4 1/3 innings. As for Springer, he just loves hitting in October. His first 2 games of the series, 6 hits, 2 home runs, 4 RBI. He's just been incredible this postseason. He moved into a tie for 7th all-time in MLB's home run list in the postseason with 17, tied with David Ortiz, Jim Thome, and Nelson Cruz. So George Springer, unsurprisingly I suppose given his track record, is finding great success in October. So that was Game 2. Springer's 2 home runs, great outing from Framber Valdez, and the Astros are up 2-0 in this series very quickly, of course. I mean, in 2 games. 2-0, obviously. And so then we head into Game 3. And the Astros, as I mentioned, and as it says here on the graphic, the Astros had the lead in this game, and the A's rallied back. The A's hitting 5 home runs and getting 3 shutout innings in relief from closer Liam Hendriks as they battle back for a 9-7 win yesterday. Zach Greinke was dealing with some soreness in his arm, so he did not draw that start. Instead, Jose Urquidy got the call for Houston in this game. And the Astros led 7-4 through the first 6 innings. It looked like we could very well be on our way to a series sweep by Houston, which would have been absolutely remarkable. And it was the home run derby early. I alluded to this. It was like the home run derby early. We had 6 home runs hit between the 2 teams at that point through the first 6 innings. Tommy La Stella, Mark Canha, Matt Olson, and Marcus Semien for the A's, Jose Altuve, and Aledmys Diaz for the Astros. And then in the top of the 7th inning, A's third baseman Chad Pinder tied the score with a 3-run home run. Catcher Sean Murphy had a go-ahead sac fly in the 8th, and the A's were able to mount that comeback. With Pinder's home run, which of course that's what tied the score for the A's. With Pinder's home run, the entire Oakland starting infield had homered in the game, which is the first time that's ever happened in MLB postseason history, which is quite remarkable. And with Pinder's home run and Sean Murphy's go-ahead sac fly, the A's go on to win this one 9-7. They keep their postseason hopes, their ALCS hopes, their postseason run going. Both starting pitchers, Jesus Luzardo and Jose Urquidy, gave up 4 earned runs in 4 1/3 innings. Houston's bullpen faltered in this game, giving up another 5 runs. Oakland closer Liam Hendriks, as mentioned, he threw 3 scoreless innings to close out the game. He was not needed in games 1 or 2 because, of course, the A's lost those games. So he was fresh, and he was great with 3 great innings out of the bullpen to make sure that the A's comeback would be enough that it would not be faltered. And the A's go on to win Game 3 yesterday. So it's the Astros still holding a 2-1 series lead heading into today's matchup. A's are going to have to win another 2 in a row to advance. Astros obviously still with the upper hand here. A couple of takeaways for you from this series. First one, the Astros offense has come alive. We talked about this on Tuesday's show, but it was just based on a one-game sample size. Sample size is a bit bigger now. Astros scoring 10 runs on Monday, 5 on Tuesday, and then 7 yesterday. George Springer is hitting. He's got 6 home hits in the series. Jose Altuve is 5 for 12 in the series. Carlos Correa is hitting. A lot of encouraging signs offensively for the Astros, and it looks like their bats have found it here in October at the perfect time, and that's certainly an encouraging sign for them, especially if they're able to win one of these next 2 games. They advance to the ALCS. There's no question they're going to need the bats to keep performing. We knew there was talent here. I mean, there was a lot of underperforming from Altuve, from Correa, from Bregman, from so many players on that team, and it looks like they found it at the right time. I mean, we knew it was there. So Astros offense has come alive. It's been fun to watch from that perspective, and we'll see how well it continues moving forward. Another observation, another takeaway for you from this matchup. The A's simply need more from their starting pitchers. They have a great bullpen, the A's do, one of the best in baseball. And it hasn't exactly been performing at an elite level here in the postseason. But regardless of that, I mean, they just need more from their starters, too, because Chris Bassett got the ball in Game 1, Sean Manaea in Game 2, Jesus Luzardo yesterday. None of them threw more than 4 1/3 innings. It was either 4 or 4 1/3 innings for each of them. And that's not horrible in a postseason start. We have to kind of change our metric for what's acceptable, for what's, ideal. But not great, and all of them gave up either 3 or 4 earned runs. So it was not great starts from any of them. I mean, they were all just not great starts, and they need somebody to step up. Frankie Montas is getting the ball in Game 4 today for the A's. Hopefully he can give them, from their perspective, hopefully he can give them a little bit more on the mound. Not super optimistic he'll be able to go deep into the game, but maybe if he can just limit it to 1 or 2 runs instead of 3 or 4, that could be key for the A's in Game 4 today. They just need a little bit more from their starting pitching. Hasn't been a disaster, hasn't been good enough either. They just haven't gotten that guy who goes out and throws 6 innings of 1-run ball. And, it's not really their style. I get it, but they kind of need that stopper here, and they're hoping Frankie Montas, even if he can't go deep, can provide a good outing for them today. The third takeaway here is a simple one. It's not over till it's over. And this series, of course, the Astros with a 2-1 series lead. 2 wins in a row for the A's, and they're advancing. Astros need to win just one of the next 2 games. But this is an A's team simply that's it's a fighting team. It's their style. I mean, this is a team that has a great record in extra innings this year, that fought back last night. I mean, this is their mentality. This is a scrappy club that's not going to give up. It's not going to roll over. So if you're the Astros, I mean, it would have been certainly nice from that perspective to get the win last night. You got to move on, though, and you got to take these A's really seriously. I mean, you can't fall into any sort of we have the series lead, or, if we don't win today, we can win tomorrow. Because if you get too lackadaisical, I suppose, about it, this is an A's team that could fight back. That's their style. I mean, it's simply their style. So the Astros can't afford to let their foot off the gas at all in the rest of this series. And that's your ALDS update from the A's-Astros series. A's able to fight back, get that Game 3 win, keep their hopes alive. The Astros with a 2-1 lead in the series going into today's game. We'll talk about today's game coming up here at the end of today's show. The other series in the American League side is Rays-Yankees, and this is a series that the outlook for it has changed significantly in the last couple of days since we last talked. On Tuesday, we were talking about the Yankees' Game 1 victory when their offense just kept rolling. Garrett Cole grinded out a pretty strong start, and the Yankees won game one 9-3. That's what we were talking about on Tuesday's show. And now here's your sort of overall update on where things stand now. Giancarlo Stanton is doing incredible things. He made history with his 6th home run in 5 postseason games last night. But the Yankees pitching has fallen flat over the last couple of days, and Randy Arozarena, the outfielder for the Rays, and his teammates, they took advantage, scoring 15 total runs in games 2 and 3 to take games 2 and 3 of the ALDS. They now have the upper hand. They're up 2-1 and just 1 victory away from their first ALCS appearance in 12 years. So things have changed. The advantage in that series has changed greatly over the last couple days. So let's talk a little bit about games 2 and games 3 of this series. In game 2 on Tuesday evening, the Rays struck out 18 Yankees batters, a postseason record for a 9-inning game. And the Rays hit 4 home runs, which tied a postseason franchise record. And they won 7-5 on Tuesday night over the Yankees, evening the series at 1. Those 4 home runs from Randy Arozarena, catcher Mike Zunino, outfielder Manuel Margot, and outfielder Austin Meadows provided enough pop to overcome a 2-homer game from Giancarlo Stanton, whose second home run was a 3-run homer in the 4th. It traveled 458 feet. It was an absolute blast off the bat of Stanton. But the Rays able to get enough offense of their own with those 4 homers to get the 7-4 victory in game 2. Tyler Glasnow on the mound for the Rays. He gave up both of those Stanton home runs, totaling 4 earned runs, and his were credited to him. But those were the only real blemishes on Glasnow's line, as he also struck out 10 Yankees, which is a Rays postseason record. So a lot of records in this game. Diego Castillo came on for the Rays with a clean inning and 2 strikeouts. Nick Anderson, who is potentially, I think he's up there, if not the best reliever in baseball right now. He struck out 4 batters in 2 scoreless innings, and then Peter Fairbanks finished things off, allowing a DJ LeMahieu RBI single, but he struck out 2, and the Rays were able to escape, or not even escape, they were able to notch that Game 2 victory. The Yankees' pitching strategy in this game is worth discussing because they kind of tried to outraise the Rays, if you will, with a creative strategy. They sent Delvi Garcia to the mound, who became the youngest pitcher in Yankees history to make a postseason start. He's just 21. But he gave up a run and then in an inning, and then they pulled him. It turned out he was really just functioning as an opener for J.A. Happ, the veteran, who didn't seem to, based on his performance and his post-game comments, he didn't seem to enjoy that role of coming in, this is a veteran starter, of coming into a game in the 2nd inning. And Happ struggled, surrendering 4 runs in 2 2/3 innings. It wasn't pretty at all. And that was that. So, one of the things that people have been talking about with this game, the Yankees just, they overcomplicated things with their pitching strategy, it seems like. They tried to do too much, and it backfired. J.A. Happ struggled, and the Rays, despite Giancarlo Stanton's home runs, they erupted, I would say, offensively to a large degree to get that Game 2 win. And that tied the series up at 1, heading into yesterday's game. And in yesterday's game, the postseason legend of Arozarena, Randy Arozarena, we talked about him on Tuesday, it continued to grow as he homered for the 3rd straight game last night. 2 other Rays went deep, and Tampa Bay got an 8-4 win last night against the Yankees in Game 3. As mentioned, Stanton homered again. This was a 2-run shot in the 8th inning off of rookie Shane McCallahan. Stanton becoming the first player with a home run in each of his team's first 5 games of a single postseason ever. He's also the first Yankee to homer in 5 consecutive playoff games. And he's completely locked in at the plate right now. He's just on an incredible run. There's not much else to say other than this is Giancarlo Stanton at his best, healthy and locked in at the plate. We've seen him do these kind of things before, so it's not as if he's showing us something. It's not as if like, wow, we didn't know he could do that. But he's just firing on all cylinders right now. But it wasn't enough. He did not get enough offensive help from his teammates, and the Yankees pitching again faltered. Aaron Judge had a sac fly in the third, Aaron Hicks an RBI double in the fourth, but just those 4 runs then for the Yankees, that wouldn't prove to be enough, because the Rays got to Masahiro Tanaka, making what very well could be his final start with the Yankees. Tanaka gave up 5 earned runs in 4 innings, and then the Rays tacked on 3 more runs off of 2 Yankees relievers. For the Rays, the offense came from an RBI single from their catcher, Michael Perez, Kevin Kiermaier, the outfielder, with a 3-run homer in the 4th, then a Arozarena with a solo shot in the 5th, and then Perez homered, and then Ji-Man Choi had an RBI double in the top of the 6th, and the Rays offense just kept chugging along, adding more runs, and pulled out the 8-4 win. Veteran starter Charlie Morton was good for the Rays. He showed some incredible velocity for him. In the beginning of this start, he gave up 2 runs, just one of them earned in 5 innings with 6 strikeouts. So a good outing for the veteran Charlie Morton. And the Rays, just like that, the bats are going. They're hitting home runs left and right the last couple of games. The Yankees pitching has faltered. And while they've gotten some offense, it hasn't been enough. And here we are. Now the Rays, with the upper hand in this series, they lead the series 2-1 heading into Game 4 today. A couple of takeaways for you from this series so far. The first one is we got to just highlight Randy Arozarena a little bit more. He can't be stopped. We talked about him on Tuesday. I talked about him here a minute ago plenty, but we got to just highlight a few of the things that he's doing. He just keeps producing at the plate. I mean, it's sort of, some of his teammates have said things along the lines recently of there's nobody better. He's the best player on the planet right now. And I mean, right now, he looks like the best player on the planet. He's not, nobody's going to consider him one of the best players in baseball right now. I mean, he's breaking out, but, we got to keep it all in perspective. But what he's doing right now, he looks so locked in. There's just no stopping him right now. Following a 3-hit game last night, which included that home run we talked about, Arozarena is now 12 for 20 in 5 postseason games. He's got 3 home runs. He's got 6 extra base hits. It's not even just homers and singles. He's doubling too. He's got 12 hits through his first 5 playoff games are the most in Rays franchise history. He's also the first Tampa Bay Ray to have multiple hits in 4 consecutive postseason games. There's not a lot else to say about it other than that we may be witnessing a major breakout. Obviously we're witnessing an incredible performance, but this may be the start of Randy Arozarena turning into a real star. I don't know. I don't have deep analysis here, but there's nobody more locked in this postseason than Arozarena, with the possible exception of Giancarlo Stanton. Both those guys in that series. Second takeaway for you here is also one we've kind of talked about, and it's the Yankees pitching falling flat. We talked about in Game 1 how Garrett Cole was good. He wasn't great, but he was good. And then the bullpen held Tampa Bay scoreless the rest of the way. And then Game 2, their pitching strategy didn't work out. Game 3, Tanaka, who's been a very good postseason pitcher in his career, just couldn't get it done. And this is actually the first time, these last 2 games, the first time in Yankees history that they've allowed 7+ runs and 3+ homers in back-to-back postseason games. So that's sort of just that stat on its own. First time ever with back-to-back playoff games allowing 7+ runs and 3+ homers. That kind of shows you, that sums up the Yankees pitching struggles, which I guess you could turn on. You can also flip it around and say it sums up the Rays' offensive success of the last few days. But I think unquestionably, I mean, it's obviously a little bit of both. It's not one way or the other. But for the Yankees, their pitching has struggled. You know, there were questions, and we talked about this. There were questions about their pitching behind Garrett Cole heading into this postseason and into this series. The bullpen is strong, but not as strong as it's been in prior years. You know, and when you're having to lean on guys like J.A. Happ and a 21-year-old rookie in game three, that's problematic. And, you know, I don't know what you can say about Masahiro Tanaka. It just didn't work out. But, you know, the Yankees, this was a vulnerability for them, and it's coming back to hurt them right here. Tampa Bay manager Kevin Cash actually said last night that he's not fully convinced that Garrett Cole won't come back to pitch in Game 4. Now, I think that's highly doubtful considering he pitched in Game 1, of course, and there's no off days, so that's just 2 days rest. Yes, 2 days rest. I mean, that's highly doubtful, but I mean, the Yankees are on the verge of elimination right now. Garrett Cole likely to go on short rest in Game 5 tomorrow if they get there. But if they don't get there, I mean, you might. I don't know. I doubt it's going to happen, but the Yankees are all of a sudden in a spot where they may not get to even have the opportunity for Garrett Cole to go Game 5 because they may be out today. One other observation for you here, the Tampa Bay Rays bullpen has been largely very good this postseason, and that's not really a surprise. If you take away one bad outing, which is John Curtis giving up 5 earned runs in Game 1 of this series, it was just an outing. He was struggling, and they just couldn't pull him because at that point the game was over. If you take out that one outing, Tampa Bay relievers have posted a 1.59 ERA in this series, so that's really promising. That's really good. I mean, we know the Rays pitching has been their strength. It hasn't, you know, dominated the Yankees because, I mean, that's an incredible offense, but generally speaking, some good outings. Charlie Morton, a good outing, as we talked about, and the bullpen, generally speaking, has come through for the Rays. So obviously that's going to be, you know, key to their success moving forward. That's pretty obvious, of course. It's their MO, and so here we are. The Yankees, one loss away from elimination. The Rays, one win away from advancing to the ALDS, the ALCS, for the first time in quite a while. The first time in 12 years. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take our first break of this show. When we come back, we're going to dive into some news and notes, some encouraging news about a MLB manager. We have an executive resigning. We have an update on the minor league situation, and a lot more coming up in our news and notes. And then we'll dive into the NL side of the field. We'll talk about the NLDS series that are underway. We have 2 teams with 2-0 leads in their series, just one win away from a NLDS sweep. So we'll discuss that and a lot more coming up here after this quick break here on Around the Bases from 110 Sports. All right, welcome back to Around the Bases here on a Thursday, October 8th. We're just going to jump right back into the rest of today's show, second half of the broadcast, and we're going to jump into some news and notes. And we'll start with this. Cleveland President Chris Antonetti said Tuesday, that the organization expects Terry Francona to resume managing next season. The veteran skipper was unable to return this season after he underwent 3 surgeries in a 4-day span to correct a blood clotting situation. He ended up spending several days in an intensive care unit. Francona revealing that information to reporters yesterday and said that during the process the thought of retiring had crossed his mind. But the great news here is that he's doing well. It appears the long-term outlook appears to be good. The veteran manager, one of the best managers in the game from a results standpoint, and by all accounts, just as a baseball mind and as a leader, he's expected to be back in the dugout for the Indians in 2021. Sandy Alomar Jr. has been filling in for Francona. Had filled in the rest of the way for the Indians this season. He figures to shift back to coaching first base, assuming he doesn't get a managerial job elsewhere. Major League Baseball is continuing ahead with its plan to eliminate the separate governing body of minor league baseball, taking those responsibilities over itself as part of a plan to shrink the minor leagues from 160 affiliates down to 120 affiliates. As we talked about previously on the show, either last episode or maybe last week, the professional baseball agreement between Major League Baseball and the National Association of Professional Baseball Leagues, it expired at the end of September without a new plan in place. So now MLB is going to be taking over the minor leagues. It's planning to move minor leagues governing offices from the association's office in Florida to the commissioner's office in New York. The identities of all the teams that are going to be losing their major league affiliations have not been announced, and it seems like it's going to be several weeks as a plan gets worked out for a path forward. But this is something that's a story that's been developing for a while now, and it's really sort of taking shape, starting to continue to progress here. Major League Baseball taking over control of the minor leagues, essentially. That's what it boils down to. And from their perspective, they view it at the league's perspective. It's viewed as a better way to manage the situation, to have the minor leagues controlled this way. Of course they're going to want the power of the minor leagues, but from a perspective of minor league players, there's obviously some discouraging things in aspects in the fact that there's going to be fewer teams who are major league affiliated, and that's going to hurt those minor league teams, players who may have had opportunities on those teams, the communities that those teams are in. So that's obviously a big hurt to the minor leagues. Now, apparently, those teams that may lose their affiliation from major league clubs may not lose all affiliation to MLB because they may be incorporated into other leagues, other professional leagues that are not MLB affiliated. So it's still a developing situation there, but that's the situation as it's playing out right now. Another update for you here. The Reds announced yesterday that President of Baseball Operations Dick Williams has resigned to pursue personal interests outside of baseball. Williams joined the Reds in 2006. He became president of baseball operations in 2016. The Reds made the postseason 4 times during his front office tenure, winning the NL Central twice. It's unclear how the organization is going to replace him. Nick Krall will remain as the Reds' vice president and general manager while the club looks for Williams' replacement. And a few quick hits for you, some quick news items. The Yankees pitcher Domingo Germán was reinstated from the restricted list by the commissioner's office on Tuesday after completing an 81-game suspension under MLB's domestic violence policy. The 28-year-old not eligible to pitch this postseason because he was on the restricted list at the date in which players need to be on a roster to be postseason eligible. The Rangers have parted ways with pitching coach Julio Rangel. Texas's pitching staff combined to post at the 24th and 23rd ranked ERAs in baseball the last 2 seasons under him. And just a few minutes ago, or a little bit ago here this morning, the Athletics' Evan Drellich reported that MLB's qualifying offer will rise from $17.8 million this past offseason to $18.9 million this upcoming offseason. The qualifying offer, the simple explanation is it's determined by the salaries of MLB's highest paid players, and it's used by teams to receive compensatory draft picks for the loss of free agents. So essentially, you'll have teams make offers to players for the qualifying offer in the off season, and if the player takes that deal, that's then that's great for the team typically. But if the player doesn't take that deal and goes elsewhere, then his former team is going to get a draft pick as a result of that, and the team he signs with is going to lose a draft pick. It's more it's obviously you can get more into the weeds with it, but that's the gist of it. 90 players have received qualifying offers since 2012 when this process started. 8 of them have taken them. Pardon me. George Springer, JT Realmuto, Trevor Bauer, DJ LeMahieu are among some players that are likely to receive them this upcoming offseason, though it seems unlikely that any of those players in particular would take the qualifying offer. All right, let's go ahead and move on now to our NLDS updates, as we have 2 teams, the Braves and the Dodgers, who have jumped out to 2-0 series leads. These series had not begun when we talked on Tuesday's show, and since then, the Braves have won 2 straight against the Marlins. The Dodgers have won 2 straight against the Padres. So let's start with the Braves, and thanks to a strong bullpen, another great start from rookie Ian Anderson, and 2 home runs in 2 straight games from Dansby Swanson and Travis d'Arnaud, so each of them homered in each of the last 2 games. The Braves took the first 2 games of the NLDS against the Marlins. They're now just 1 win away from advancing to the NLCS for the first time in almost 20 years. So 2 games to break down for each of these series. Let's start with Game 1, which the Braves won 9-5 after Travis d'Arnaud's tie-breaking 3-run home run highlighted a 6-run 7th inning for Atlanta. Ronald Acuna got things going with a home run in the bottom of the first inning. He became the youngest player in postseason history with a leadoff home run. That was really impressive. The Marlins struck back in the first inning, in the second inning with 1 run, in the third inning with 2 runs, and then with I don't even have the word to describe it, just a real weak effort and a real kind of a weak move in Sandy Alcantara hitting Ronald Acuna Jr. after his home run in which he bat flipped. Alcantara hit him with a fastball in the bottom of the third, and that led to some tense moments as the 2 stared each other down, and there were some strong words after the game. Acuna's frustration with the Marlins dating back to 2018, when there was a suspension for a Marlins pitcher after he hit Acuna, and Acuna's been hit twice as frequently by the Marlins pitchers in comparison to all other teams. So he obviously frustrated there. That move, though, by the Marlins, which, of course, as typical for any situation like this, they say was an accident. This move, though, coming back to bite the Marlins when Marcell Ozuna drove home Acuna Jr. with the double, and then d'Arnaud doubled in Ozuna. And the 6th inning, though, that was the big difference maker for the Braves. The Atlanta Braves turned a 4-3 deficit into a 9-4 lead in a span of just 7 batters. Ozuna with an RBI single. d'Arnaud hit that 3-run homer, and Dansby Swanson hit that 2-run home run. Miami scored 1 run in the 8th, but Atlanta holding on, getting that 9-5 win in Game 1. Alcantara for the Marlins got the start. His final line was 5 earned runs in 6 innings. Doesn't quite do him a justice to do a justice to that performance that he gave, but nonetheless 5 earned and 6 for him. Max Fried got the start for the Braves. It wasn't his greatest outing with 4 earned runs in 4 innings, but the Braves bullpen came on and took it the rest of the way very strong, allowing just 3 hits, 1 solo run, and 5 innings to close things out. And the Braves won Game 1 of that series. And then game 2 was last night, and the explanation here is pretty simple. It was Ian Anderson, the 22-year-old rookie right-hander, gave up just 3 hits, 1 walk, struck out 8 over 5 and 2/3 shutout innings. Swanson and d'Arnaud, they homered again. The Braves bullpen held the Marlins scoreless after Ian Anderson's exit for a 2-0 win, a 2-0 series lead. Those 2 solo home runs from the Braves, both off of Pablo Lopez of the Marlins, counted for the only runs scored in that game. Lopez was good overall for the Marlins, just those 2 earned runs, 7 strikeouts in 5 innings, but so was the Miami bullpen for that matter. But the Marlins, it didn't really matter because the Marlins couldn't touch Ian Anderson or the 4 Atlanta relievers who followed him. Atlanta's victory yesterday, meaning the Braves have now won 4 consecutive postseason games for the first time since 1999. So they're rolling right now. It does get interesting, and we'll talk about moving forward in the series, so we'll talk about that here in just a second. The Marlins, though, falling behind 2 games to none in the NLDS, and the Braves now just 1 win away from making the NLCS for the first time since 2001. So I got a handful of small takeaways here for you from this series so far. Braves pitching is stealing the show, as the Braves became just the 3rd team in MLB history to toss shutouts in 3 of their first 4 games to begin a postseason. So that was really remarkable. And you know, offense is their thing. I mean, this is one of the best offenses in baseball. And pitching was a concern. And it still is a concern from a depth perspective because all 4 starts for the Braves this postseason have been from Max Fried and Ian Anderson. But when they've been out there, they've been great. And no question about that. They've posted a 1.59 ERA combined in their collective 4 starts. 26 strikeouts and a little under 23 innings pitched. And the Braves bullpen has been outstanding against the Marlins. 8 1/3 innings pitched, 1 earned run allowed. So it's really been the Braves pitching that's stolen this, that's powered this season, this series for the Braves thus far. Of course, we've seen some great offense as well with Swanson and d'Arnaud and others, but it's really been the Braves pitching that stepped up. But again, I should mention here, pitcher they're throwing out for Game 3 today, Kyle Wright, hasn't exactly been outstanding this year at all. And there are real questions behind those top 2 guys in the Braves rotation. They've done about everything that you could possibly expect of them and more. But there are questions beyond them. And so that's where it could get interesting moving into Game 3 today and potential Game 4 or 5. But particularly, assuming that they advance to the NLCS, their pitching situation could, beyond those 2 ace caliber guys, could be something to monitor. I do want to talk briefly a little bit more about Ian Anderson, who's really emerging as one of the top young starting pitchers in baseball. His outing last night coming after 6 scoreless with 9 strikeouts against the Reds in Game 2 of the Wild Card Series. His first 2 postseason starts now are in the books, 11 2/3 innings, no runs, 5 hits, 3 walks, 17 strikeouts. He became the first pitcher under the age of 23 to log multiple starts of 5+ scoreless innings in the same postseason since 2013, and that was Michael Wacha, by the way. So Ian Anderson, really looking like he's emerging. It's not just a postseason thing. He's been great this season. He hasn't, when he started this season, the regular season, he was outstanding. It looks like he's one of the young up-and-coming star pitchers in baseball. A couple other takeaways. Travis d'Arnaud is really breaking out this year. I mean, it's a real resurgence, a real breakout for him this year. The 31-year-old became the first Atlanta catcher with multiple home runs in a single postseason since Brian McCann back in 2005. d'Arnaud is now tied for second among active catchers in career postseason home runs with 5. And, if you recall, he played in the majors with 3 different teams before 2020. He's 31 years old, like I said. He most notably played for the Mets for several years, but they released him back in May of 2019. And then he signs with the Braves heading into this year. And he's outstanding. 321 batting average, 9 home runs, 34 RBI, and an OPS above 900 this season. A big under-the-radar aspect of Atlanta's offensive success this year and one of the best offensive offseason pickups of this past offseason, I should say. So Travis d'Arnaud, a name to know. It looks like here at age 30 plus, he is really finding it at the plate, and he's a good catcher as well. Final observation, anything's possible in these series, of course, but it looks like the Marlins' postseason streak could come to an end. The Marlins have never lost a postseason series in their entire franchise history. They're 7-0 in playoff series. They haven't exactly been a lot. They've been 7 times. They've won all 7 after their wild card win against the Cubs, but now they're going to have to win 3 straight to avoid that perfect streak coming to an end. It looks like it is probably going to come to an end. This is certainly the series I'm most confident in the ultimate result of any of the division series right now. But this Marlins team hasn't stopped fighting this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they put up a fight against the Braves in Game 3 today. Other NLDS series to talk about, and that is the late games from the last couple of days. It's Padres-Dodgers. 2 very different games producing, generally speaking, the same result, the same ultimate outcome. The Dodgers taking both of the first 2 games of this series against the Padres, but in very different fashion. So Game 1, the Dodgers won 5-1, but it was not a pretty game at all. There were so many walks in this game, but the Dodgers tallied 4 hits, all in the 6th inning, along with a remarkable 10 walks, and they benefited from an error and a wild pitch in that 5-1 Game 1 victory on Tuesday. Pitching for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, Padres starter Mike Clevinger, who had been left off of their wildcard series roster, he made it just 2 pitches into the 2nd inning before he left due to a recurrence of his elbow injury. Clevinger saying post-game that his discomfort felt like bones hitting in the back of my elbow. Despite that, he's apparently not necessarily done for the postseason. He was removed from the team's NLDS roster before Game 2 yesterday, and thus he's not eligible to return until the World Series, but apparently there's some hope that hypothetically, should they advance, would be possible, given that apparently doctors have told him he can't do any more damage to the elbow. But right now the Dodgers have much bigger things to worry about, much more immediate things to worry about, down in this series 2-0. In this game, though, Game 1, 9 relievers out of the Padres' heavily worked bullpen combined to give up just 4 hits, but they issued 7 walks the rest of the way and then thus couldn't keep the Dodgers in check. Justin Turner scored in the bottom of the 5th on an error by Padres' second baseman Jake Cronenworth, and the Dodgers' 4-1 6th inning included a Corey Seager sac fly, Justin Turner RBI single, Cody Bellinger RBI single, and a wild pitch. The Padres' offense only managed 1 run in this game, an RBI single from catcher Austin Nola in the 4th. Walker Buehler threw just 4 innings for the Dodgers, walking 4, but he struck out 8 and allowed just that single run. Dustin May with 2 scoreless in relief, followed by Victor Gonzalez, Blake Trinan, and Kenley Jansen with scoreless innings for the Dodgers. It was their 7th straight victory dating back to the regular season, and so now, thus, with last night's victory, they're up to 8 straight. And one other thing I should note about that Game 1, we had an incredible incredible historical outing with the 3rd pitcher in the game for the Padres, 20-year-old Ryan Weathers, who became the 2nd youngest player ever to debut in the postseason. He never played above A-ball, last appeared in a game last August, and he was the 2nd pitcher out of the bullpen for the Padres in Game 1 of the NLDS, and considering those circumstances in particular, it was a great outing for him. He only threw 1 1/3 innings, but it was 1 1/3 scoreless with 2 walks and 1 strikeout. His first big league strikeout coming against the reigning NL MVP Cody Bellinger. So that was that, though. The Dodgers taking Game 1 by a score of 5-1, and then we head into last night's game. And this was a high-level, down-to-the-wire contest. Cody Bellinger homered, and then he also robbed Fernando Tatis Jr. of a go-ahead home run. Joe Kelly bailed out Kenley Jansen with the bases loaded, escaping with the bases loaded after issuing 2 walks, and the Dodgers escaped with a 6-5 Game 2 win. This was very much instead of being a sloppy, ugly game in many aspects, this was a high-level game. Really fun game, an intense game. The Padres struck first in the second inning when a Will Myers RBI double. The Dodgers scored 3 in the third inning, 1 in the fourth off of Zach Davies. Corey Seager had a double, Max Muncy a single, Bellinger a homer. Manny Machado and Eric Hosmer went back-to-back in the sixth for the Padres to pull them within 1. And then Fernando Tatis, with a runner on, had a chance to give the Padres the lead, hit a deep fly to center field. Cody Bellinger, an outstanding leaping home run robbing catch in center field to keep the Dodgers out in front. And then they added to their lead with 2 runs in the 7th inning on a Justin Turner sac fly and Max Muncy RBI single. And it turned out those extra runs, that padding would prove to be crucial for the Dodgers when Kenley Jansen got into trouble in the 9th inning. Moreland an RBI double, Grisham an RBI single for the Padres. Joe Kelly came on, facing Fernando Tatis, and he walked him. And then he walked Manny Machado. Bases loaded. Padres down 1. Kelly gets Eric Hosmer to ground out to second base. And that was that. Zach Davies, not a great start for the Padres. Kershaw 3 earned in 6 innings for the Dodgers, who are now just 1 win away from reaching the NLCS for the 4th time in the last 5 seasons. And at this point, given, and we'll talk about this in a minute, the Padres pitching situation right now, I think we're at the point where this is they're going to have to win 3 in a row against a Dodgers team. I think that's highly doubtful at this point. A few quick takeaways on this series so far. The Dodgers showing why they're the best team in baseball. No surprise here that we've been talking about it, and they're just continuing to show it. They haven't had this incredible offensive outburst with all these home runs or this really eye-popping, dominant outing from a starter in this series, but they just keep getting it done with all the quality options they have at their disposal. That they can turn to Dustin May, a starter after 4 innings of Walker Buehler. That they can have a quick hook for their relievers given their depth. That some of their great hitters can have bad days because there's so many of them that others can step up. They can win the game with home runs, and they can win without them. This was the first game of this postseason last night that the team did not out-homer its opponent and yet still won. So the Dodgers have so many ways they can win. And a tall task is ahead for San Diego. That's takeaway 2. The Dodgers, the only team in baseball that did not lose 3 games in a row at any point during the regular season. The Padres' bullpen is taxed. They're going with Adrian Morjon as their opener today in Game 3. He posted a 4.66 ERA this year. So it's a tall task ahead for the Padres. But look, they're going to keep fighting. They've had incredible comebacks this year. It's been an incredible season for them. I don't expect them to do anything other than keep fighting until the last out. Last thing I want to mention in this series, it may not prove to be very important for the rest of this series, but moving forward for the Dodgers, there is a closer question for them. Kenley Jansen could be pulled from the closer's role after showing decreased velocity earlier in the postseason. His struggles last night. Dave Roberts saying post-game yesterday, "I'm going to think through it," as far as his 9th inning plans. So it's unclear exactly where the Dodgers could turn. They could turn to Kelly. They could turn to several other options. So we'll see what happens there. But that is something to monitor for the Padres moving forward. It's probably more of a long-term situation, long-term being the NLCS or World Series, assuming they get to both of those things. All right, so that's our NLDS update. We're going to go ahead and take our final break of the show. When we come back, as always, to wrap up our show here on this Thursday, what's on deck? We'll take a look at the scoreboard, not the schedule for today, I should say. Pitching matchups. I'll give you my quick predictions for those games. That's coming up next here on Around the Bases from 110 Sports. All right, welcome back one final time to this episode of Around the Bases from 110 Sports. I'm Chris Brown. Just time for what's on deck today and the next couple of days here. So, as I mentioned, we have game 3 of the two NLDS series happening today, with the Braves and Dodgers just one win away from a series sweep. So coming up in just a few minutes, just after the top of the hour, a little after 2 Eastern, we'll have Braves and Marlins. That game is in warm-up now. Kyle Wright to the mound for the Braves. It's the first pitcher for the Braves to start this postseason not named Max Fried or Ian Anderson. Sixto Sanchez drawing the start for the Marlins. And I could really see this game going either way. I don't have a strong feeling about it. I could see that the Marlins are going to fight, but also the Braves, I'm very convinced, are going to win this series. I think it's going to depend on whether the Braves offense shows up enough today, or like whether the how the Marlins pitching fares, because I don't expect a great outing necessarily from Kyle Wright. Obviously, he could step up, but I'm not expecting a great outing. I'm not expecting this game to finish, for the Braves to be able to win this game only scoring 1 or 2 runs. So we'll see how that plays out, though. Atlanta leads 2-0 in this series. My prediction, of course, is that the Braves are going to win this series. And then the nightcap tonight, 9:08 Eastern, is Dodgers-Padres. It's going to be Adrian Morjon pitching opening for the Padres in this game, and then afterwards it's who knows from their bullpen that's been heavily taxed as they fight to try to keep their postseason hopes alive. Dustin May heads to the mound for the Dodgers. We just learned that within the last few minutes during this broadcast, that Dustin May drawing the start for LA tonight. Part of me thinks the Padres. I struggle to see the Padres getting swept. Obviously, their pitching situation heading into tonight isn't great, and Dustin May is a good starter, obviously. But I struggle to see them getting. I find it a little hard to believe that they would get swept. So I'm going to say the Padres take Game 3 tonight, but the Dodgers come back and win Game 4. Either way, Dodgers are going to win this series, and I'm pretty convinced of that. And then the two ALDS matchups tonight, this afternoon and this evening, we have the Athletics and the Astros. That one's at 3:30 Eastern. Frankie Montas opposite Zach Greinke, who had been dealing with some arm soreness, which is why he didn't start earlier in this series, but apparently no structural problems, and he's going to give it a go today for the Astros as they try to take Game 4 and advance. And as far as my pick for this game, I'm going to say the A's battle again to tie up this series. I'm going to say the A's take Game 4, just because I feel like they're just going to keep fighting. They're going to get it done in Game 4, but I'm still going to say the Astros take this series. If not tonight, then in Game 4 tomorrow. Game 5 tomorrow. So I'm still going with Astros. So far, I'm picking all the teams that are leading these series to win these series, and that's not a surprise. Of course, not exactly a bold move, and I'll do the same in the Rays-Yankees series tonight. It'll be Jordan Montgomery on the mound for the Yankees, and for the Rays, it'll be Ryan Thompson, so not exactly a great pitcher's duel likely in that game. But again, I guess I'll pick the Yankees to. I don't think they're going to go down in a Game 4. I'll pick the Rays to. Well, yeah, I'll pick the Rays to win this series now. I'll pick it in Game 5. I feel like this one's really going to go Game 5. That's just a gut feeling, though. No great analysis on that one. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Around the Bases. A couple other things to tell you about here as we head out, looking long-term schedule-wise. We could have as many as 4 games tomorrow. Game 5's on the AL side, Game 4's on the NL side, and then any Game 5's in the NLDS would take place on Saturday. The ALCS will begin on Sunday, and the NLCS will begin on Monday, and then on Tuesday, we'll be back to talk about it all. So we'll have a lot changing by then. We'll have our ALCS and NLCS matchups underway, and we'll discuss that coming up on Tuesday's show. But that's going to do it for this edition of Around the Bases from 110 Sports. I'm Chris Brown. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to tune in for the J-Mole Show with Josh Molnix tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. And go to 110sportsmedia.com for all of the latest. Subscribe to our newsletter. Check out our podcasts, our shows available on demand, our latest written content. It's all there for you on 110sportsmedia.com. So make sure to check that out. And we'll have another episode of The Bonfire coming up sometime this weekend as well. Touchline Talk will be back on Tuesday. I'll be back here with Around the Bases on Tuesday as well. We'll have a lot to talk about at that point. We'll be discussing the ALCS 2 games in, the NLCS 1 game in, and we don't even have any of those teams yet. We could have them as soon as tonight, all those teams, or that could be a few more days before we get to that point. So enjoy the baseball this weekend. Enjoy the start of the ALCS and NLCS. Check out the website for previews of those over the weekend. Stay safe, and I will talk to you again on Tuesday.